Good morning. Can you believe it's already December the 4th? Just a few weeks left until Christmas. Time to get our shopping list brushed up and finished up and get all the decorations prepared and start bringing the food home that we're going to be preparing during this wonderful season. I've always loved Christmas. I can remember as a little boy just hardly could contain myself because of the magic of the time. I find that now, as I'm busy with life and the shop and all the things that go along with this season, that sometimes it's hard to get to some of the details, but I do urge you to stop every once in a while and just kind of pay attention to the beauty of this season, wherever you live, whether you've got some cold weather and a little snow, or whether you're here in Florida where we make up for it with all kinds of bright lights and flamingos and all that sorts of thing. My gallery today will point you in the direction of today's theme, which is to talk a little bit about needlepoint. I've been working on a commission project this week that made me start thinking a little bit more about it. Needlepoint is one of the first crafts that I took up. I actually began doing some crewel embroidery, but needlepoint came along fairly quickly after that, and it's still one of my loves. I guess I want to say just a minute or two about the pros and cons of needlepoint as opposed to kind of cross stitch, surface embroidery, some of the other kind of options that people have. Needlepoint is, in the first place, intensely durable and will last kind of forever. I often talk about when you use the Patternayan wools or the Appleton wools, they last like steel. They really are pretty amazing. And using painted canvases, you can come up with some beautiful design work. I think that in a lot of ways, needlepoint has gone out of favor or is not quite as popular as it used to be for several reasons. One, it's a pretty expensive craft. If you're going to buy painted canvases, you can spend quite a bit of money for those, sometimes $200–300 and up. And then on top of that, you have to buy all the wools or other fibers that you use, which might be pearl cotton or silk or whatever. So I think sometimes that's prohibitive, but a lot of us still love our needlepoint a lot. You do have to be aware when you're stitching needlepoint, if you've got a lot of background that is of a similar color, that you also want to think about using some kind of a frame to work on. I have some of these little put together frames here in the shop, or you might even use a scroll frame similar to what you might use for counted cross stitch. Problem with needlepoint is that usually when you're just doing your tent stitch and you're creating a design with that, your canvas when it's finished often is at a bit of a slant because all of your stitches are going in the same direction and they tend to kind of warp the canvas just a little bit. So I do urge you to think about using a frame of some type if you're doing any kind of piece of any size, or learn how to do the basket weave stitch, which I may show you sometime on here. It's really pretty simple. With the tent stitch, you're just going back and forth or up and down. With the basket weave stitch, you're going to always go on the horizontal and keep that pattern going, and that'll help to alleviate some of the wonkiness that comes in when you're working with needlepoint. There's so many things I could talk about with respect to needlepoint. It's a wonderful craft that goes way back in history. The little gallery that I have at the beginning of today's episode gives you an idea of some of the pieces that I've worked on through the years, which often involve legacies. One of the ones I show you on there is this beautiful old piece that somebody found in their attic. When I got it, the flowers on the front were done, but the background had not been done. And it even had the hardware for a bell pull to go with it. I consider this a legacy piece because somebody else's hard work did the petty point, or the tiny little stitches that go in the middle, and then I did the finishing work. You notice this canvas too. This is an older kind of canvas that gives you the opportunity not only to do the mono or the big stitches, but also to focus in smaller and do the petty point stitches. What you typically see today when you buy canvas is the mono canvas like this, which is just a single square and doesn't give you that option of the smaller stitches. As I say, there's so many things I could talk about. I don't even kind of know where to start, but amongst those legacy projects, you saw a chair cushion from the local Episcopal church. That was a project that I worked on a few years back. They had some damage to the bishop's chair at St. James Episcopal, and I was able to find some gold threads, or some fake gold threads, I suspect, to replace the gold work on those. I had to do some restoration of the canvas underneath in order to make that work. I often will get pieces here in the shop where someone has begun to work, like the one with the little mushrooms and those sort of things in the gallery, and it's nice to be able to finish those and pass those along to someone. The project that I'm working on right now, as I said, is a commission piece. It's a really fun little, quick little needlepoint with a flamingo theme. Usually if I do commission pieces here in the shop, because there's no real way to charge people for the hours that it takes to do these projects, is if they have a story or if they have some connection to someone and there's a real purpose for them. I don't think I have enough time in my life to do all the needlepoint or cross-stitch projects that I want to do, but it's kind of fun to work on that. The last thing that you see in the gallery just before the broadcast began on this episode is a series of needlepoint chairs that I've been working on probably easily 25 years. I found this wonderful book in London at the Royal School of Needlecraft, which is a book of needlepoint designs by William Morris and his company. Of course, very famous stitchers back in the day, in the later part of the 19th century, early part of the 20th century. Just some real classic designs. So far I've done 4 chairs with a blue background, and those all have the William Morris bird designs on them. And then a project that I'm working on right now, which you saw some pictures of, is I've designed 4 flowers from the William Morris collection, and I'm doing those with this kind of burnished gold background. This is a project that I like to take somewhere where I'm not sure the light's going to be great, because all I'm doing is working on the background stitch. And you can see there an example of the basket weave. I know you won't be able to see it very clearly here in the video, but you can see that I'm working on the horizontal, which will help keep this canvas from going out straight as I work forward. One remedy for the expensive nature of needlepoint is to think about doing counted needlepoint. Here in the shop I have 14 count mono canvas, like I mentioned. You can really design any piece that you can count if you have blank canvas like this. That's how I've done the William Morris designs that I have. You can take any cross stitch pattern, buy the yarns or the threads that you need for it, and work on it from there, which is much less expensive than buying painted canvases. But of course, some people come in and tell me they don't want to count. They just want to sit down and fill in, and certainly that's something that can be done. An example of fibers that we use in needlepoint, I prefer wools, and my favorite wool is the Patterney and Persian wools. This company went out of business some years back, and I have some old skeins from when it was originally being done. And then a company up in New York called Colonial Needlecraft has taken it up, and they've bought up the dyes, and they're redoing the patterning yarns again. And I often have, well, I have a full collection of their colors in these little cards, which are 8 yards, and then I still have and can order the hanks, which are much longer and which you would need for larger projects. Many people will use pearl cotton for smaller mesh needlepoint projects. DMC always works. Even sometimes people will use silk. These are some old vintage silks that I have here in the shop. I prefer tapestry needles, and I always love John James for those. I know everybody has their favorite needles and their favorite sizes, so there are those. You can still buy needlepoint kits. I have a few here in the shop, but I really don't stock very many because I find that needlepoint isn't quite the rage that it once was. This is Needlepoint Treasures, I guess is the name of this company. The one thing I will find when you get really old kits is that sometimes some of the yarns are a little bit weaker. So you do want to be careful as you're working on that. A variation of needlepoint, of course, is long stitch. And you can see a project that I've been working on way longer than I should have been. I guess because it just hasn't captured my attention too much yet. This is long stitch, where you're basically filling in. You've got a pattern and you're using your yarns to fill in the background. If you saw the Dome of the Rock, the very colorful building in the series of pictures at the beginning of the video, you would see another example of long stitch. As far as painted canvases goes, there's some really nice modern designs, which is very helpful. These are cute little Celtic painted canvases that I have here in the shop, and that give you some idea of what you can do. You can still buy, if you look around, pieces where somebody else has done the design work and the counting, and all you have to do is fill in the background with your yarns. And I'll just kind of hold this up a little bit. This is one of the vintage canvases that I have. Of course, you can imagine how long it would take to do this whole piece, how wonderfully beautiful it would be to finish it, and of course you'd have to buy all the yarns to match, which I have here, and I won't say it's not a project that you shouldn't undertake. I just know that you need to be prepared for that. So that's kind of the products that I have here. As far as the process of needlepoint, it's very soothing. I know as I've worked on these chair cushions, when I'm in the mood to do the counting and the more exacting work, that's when I put the designs in. I just take some kind of a pencil or something and delineate the outline of the chair cushion that I'm going to be replacing. You really can't see those lines here, but they're still there. I think I took a grease pencil or something and used that to create the background here. So as I say, when you're working in the middle, of course, this is a little more intense and you really do need to count. But then once you get to the more repetitive background part, you can kind of do that just about anywhere. And as long as you keep your tension about the same on your threads as you work your way through, you don't have to have really bright light. Another disadvantage of needlepoint, I think, that some people tell me is it begins to hurt their wrists and their hands because there's a good bit more work pulling the needle and the yarns through the canvas if you're using yarns. The little one that I'm working on here in the shop is not using yarns. It's got mostly pearl cotton, and I use some nice little shiny Krynic fibers here at the top. That's going to be a cute little stocking that I believe this owner is going to frame eventually. She had several of these with flamingo themes that she likes. I've mentioned before a group that helps restore and finish legacy projects. If you get a chance, look up Loose Ends sometime. They have a wonderful website, and it's a resource. It's a nonprofit resource that helps connect stitchers and people, families who have lost loved ones who really want pieces finished that those loved ones might have started. I think it's always cool to remember that when you're working on a piece that somebody else started, their DNA is on that project. If you have something that your great-grandmother, in the case of my sister-in-law made, the little one with the mushrooms that you see in the gallery at the beginning, her great-grandmother started that. And I was able to finish that and pass it along to her mother, who was turning 90 years old at the time. So I do think needlepoint in particular makes me stop and think a little bit about the legacy that we leave. And certainly as strong and wonderful as needlepoint projects are, they last a very long time. Indeed, I think if you ever see much stitching in antique shops, a lot of what you will see are furniture and things like that with needlepoint. And surprisingly, the needlepoint sometimes will outlast the wood and the other products that are used to make the furniture. Another fun thing I've seen is using old canvases and putting them on the front of fire screens. More decorative than anything else. Obviously, you don't want something flammable in front of your fire, but there's some nice ideas there anyway. So that's a little thought about needlepoint, some of the advantages, some of the disadvantages, some of the fun projects that you can get involved with as you think about needlepoint. I hope you're winding down those stitch projects that you're trying to get ready for Christmas. There's nothing worse than waiting or having to wait up until the very last minute to finish something as you prepare for the holidays, because it's going to get busier from here. The more hectic it becomes, the less chance it seems that we have to do these things that we love so much. But I want to continue to wish you well during this joyous season, and I hope you'll come back and see me again next week. Take care. This is Gary Sly from the Legacy of Handmade Objects.